My girlfriend told me she didn't see me as a boyfriend anymore, just a roommate who pays bills. I said perfect. 2 weeks later, when she saw me leaving for a date, she finally realized what she'd lost, that I've always believed that relationships don't fall apart in one moment. They erode the way metal rusts. Slow, silent, almost polite about it. My girlfriend, Leah, and I had lived together for just under a year. I'm 32, she's 28. We met at a friend's birthday party, bonded over our mutual dislike of loud bars, and spent the first 6 months in that fuzzy, warm phase where conversations stretch past midnight and even their smallest quirks feel charming instead of grating. Back then, she used to call me steadfast. She meant it as a compliment. By the time this story starts, I think she'd quietly downgraded it to predictable. Our home was fine. Two-bedroom apartment, decent location, the kind of place that looks like Pinterest if Pinterest included the occasional stack of unsorted mail and a dying plant that neither partner wants to admit they've neglected. I worked in cybersecurity, hybrid schedule, while she worked remotely in marketing. The first signs weren't dramatic, just a series of tiny shifts. For example, she used to greet me at the door when I got home. Nothing cheesy. Usually a, "Hey, you're back early," or "God, work killed me today." But 2 months before everything collapsed, she started keeping her headphones on when I walked in, pretending not to hear, or maybe not bothering to pretend. Another, we'd always grocery shop together. Silly ritual, but she began going without me. Always. "Oh, I forgot you said you needed eggs," or "You can pick your stuff up tomorrow." And then the financial things. One night, she left her laptop open on the kitchen island, an Excel spreadsheet full of her monthly expenses. Color-coded. Meticulous. My name showed up under shared costs, but at a much higher number than hers. I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to say, "Hey, are you starting to see me less like a partner and more like an ATM?" That's the funny thing about subtle red flags. You'd rather interpret them as temporary irritations than admit they're the early symptoms of a disease. The real shift came during a conversation that started so casually I didn't even understand what was happening until it was already over. It was a Tuesday night, raining outside, the kind of dull, persistent drizzle that makes everything feel soft and slightly muted. I was cooking pan-searing chicken, watching it turn the right shade of golden, while she sat at the counter scrolling through her phone. She looked up and said, "I don't see you as a boyfriend anymore, just a roommate who pays bills." Like she was reading a neutral weather forecast. No anger, no guilt, just a stated fact. I turned off the stove. The sudden silence felt heavy. "Okay," I said. "Is that how you meant it to sound?" She shrugged. "I'm just being honest. We've gotten boring. Routine. You work, I work. You don't bring much excitement into my life. It feels like we just coexist, and I don't know. I don't feel like I'm dating someone. I feel like we just share a space." I waited for some follow-up, maybe reassurance, maybe a "let's fix this," maybe anything that indicated she wanted us. Nothing. So I asked, "What do you want instead?" She hesitated just long enough to make something in my chest tighten. "I want passion, adventure, someone who isn't just stable." She said that word like it tasted bland on her tongue. "I want someone who makes my life feel bigger." "And I make your life feel what?" "Smaller." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." She sighed, annoyed I wasn't absorbing this as gracefully as she imagined. "Look, I'm just saying what's true for me. If we broke up tomorrow, nothing in my day-to-day would change. That's not how a relationship should feel." Something clicked in me then. Not anger, not sadness. Just clarity. A small, steady voice in my head whispered, "She's already checked out. You're just realizing it late." "All right," I said, wiping my hands on a towel. "If you don't see me as a boyfriend anymore, then perfect." She blinked. Not the reaction she expected. "What does that mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like. Roommates split rent. Roommates buy their own groceries. Roommates don't expect emotional labor or shared responsibilities or intimacy." She scoffed, half defensive, half confused. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not. I'm agreeing with you." She frowned but didn't argue. Maybe she thought I was bluffing or trying to guilt trip her. I wasn't. Not even a little. Because something about hearing her say it out loud flipped a switch in me. It wasn't spite. It was realization. If someone tells you they don't see you as a partner, the worst thing you can do is cling harder. So the next morning, I drafted a new budget. Split utilities. Split rent. Separate shelves in the fridge. Separate laundry days. Separate everything. I left the printed sheet on the counter. By evening, her expression when she saw it was a mix of disbelief and irritation. "We're really doing this?" she asked. "You said we were roommates," I replied. "I'm respecting that." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Pride won. She signed the agreement. And that was how the quiet shift became a full tectonic crack. 2 weeks later, I'd be walking out the door in a crisp button-down, leaving for a date, with someone who actually seemed excited to see me. And Leah would be standing in the hallway, pale and speechless. But that comes later. For now, this is the beginning. The moment the foundation stopped creaking and finally split, the first few days of being roommates were awkward in a way that felt almost clinical. There's no guidebook on how to emotionally detach from someone who still lives 10 feet from you, so you improvise. You learn to navigate shared spaces like strangers. You measure your words. You notice everything. Leah, for example, reacted to the new arrangement with a kind of brittle pride. She pretended it didn't affect her. She walked around with headphones on more often, worked in her room instead of at the dining table, and posted Instagram stories with captions like "Independent Queen Energy Sparkles." Meanwhile, I stuck to the agreement. Rent split 50/50ths. Utilities split. Her groceries, her shelf. My groceries, mine. No shared meals. No, can you pick up XYZ on your way home? No automatic emotional labor. Cold. Maybe. But she's the one who drew the blueprint. What surprised me most was the silence. Not angry silence. Not tense silence. Just absence. She used to talk about her day, her annoying clients, her friend drama, the random things she saw online. Now it was like she had nothing left to say to me. Or worse, like she didn't think I earned the right to hear it. I could feel the gap widening, inch by inch. On day 5 of the roommate experiment, I came home early from work. Rainstorm again, fitting apparently. Leah was in the kitchen opening a delivery box with 3 expensive skincare products. I glanced at the label, $180 each. New stuff? I asked calmly. She barely looked up. Yeah, I deserve a treat. Something in her tone stuck with me. I deserve a treat. Not, I bought myself something nice. Not, I felt like splurging. It was defensive, almost like she expected judgment. I nodded and grabbed my groceries from the fridge, preparing to cook my own dinner. Her eyes flicked toward my ingredients. "You're not making enough for 2?" she asked. "You said we weren't doing shared meals anymore." She paused. "I didn't say that. You implied it. I said I don't see you as a boyfriend. That doesn't mean we can't eat together." I met her eyes. "Leah, roommates don't cook each other dinner." She opened her mouth, closed it, and looked annoyed, as if my logic was unfair. But I wasn't twisting anything. I was following the rules she made. Our apartment walls were thin. Not hear every secret thin, but thin enough that when she FaceTimed her friend while pacing the living room, I could hear her tone, even if I missed some words. One evening, I heard her say, "I don't know, he's acting like it's my fault. I just wanted more excitement, not a full-on contract." Her friend said something low. Leah laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. More like frustration. Or embarrassment. "He actually split the groceries. Like we're college roommates." Another pause. "No, I'm not going to apologize. He's the one who got boring." There it was. The quiet truth. In her mind, she was the victim of my stability. I wasn't angry. Just done. The real turning point came the next Friday. I was sitting at my desk, finishing work, when my phone buzzed. A dating app notification. I'd reactivated my profile 2 days earlier, but hadn't really touched it. I wasn't using it as a weapon. I genuinely wanted to see who I was without her constant calibration of my worth. The message was from someone named Marissa. She lived one neighborhood over. Smart, funny opener, normal photos, no filters. She seemed grounded. We chatted for hours. It felt natural in a way I didn't expect. By midnight, we had plans. Coffee first. Maybe dinner if the vibe was right. For the first time in months, I felt something unfamiliar. Anticipation. Not excitement. Not hope. Something quieter. Something I hadn't felt since before Leah began treating me like background furniture. A sense of forward motion. The next morning, while making my coffee, I noticed Leah watching me from the hallway. Not angry. Not curious. More like unsettled. "You're up early," she said. "Yeah, I've got plans." "What kind of plans?" I sipped my coffee and didn't volunteer anything. She wasn't owed details. "You're being weird," she said. No, I'm just being a roommate. That landed. Hard. She looked away. Then, softer. I didn't mean to hurt you, you know. I know. I was just talking. That's the problem, Leah. You weren't thinking. You were talking. Her eyes flickered with something. Regret? Ego? Fear? Hard to tell. She swallowed it. We should talk later, she said. If you want, I answered. But I'm leaving in 20. She didn't ask where. She didn't ask with whom. She didn't ask why. But she stood in the doorway of her room for a long time as I got dressed. And when I walked past her, wearing a navy button-down and a calm expression she hadn't seen in months, she took a half step toward me, then stopped, then watched me walk out without asking a single question. The date with Marissa wasn't cinematic. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't a rebound high. It was calm. We met at a quiet coffee shop tucked between a bookstore and a florist. The kind of place where people speak softly and the air smells like roasted beans and old paper. She wore a light sweater, no heavy makeup, hair pulled back. Real. Grounded. Human. Hi, she said with a small smile. Hi. Simple. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to perform. With Leah, I'd slowly started measuring my words, trying not to be too boring, or too predictable, or too routine. With Marissa, I just was. We talked about work, family, the bizarre experience of online dating in your 30s. She told me about her dog. I told her about the time I broke our dishwasher trying to fix it with a butter knife. She laughed in that way people do when they're genuinely engaged. Not polite, not performative, just present. After coffee, we walked a few blocks in the cold. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and asked, "Is this weird for you? Dating again?" A little, I admitted, but not in a bad way. Good, she said. I don't do drama. It was almost funny. The most grounding moment of my month came from a stranger telling me she was allergic to chaos. And something in my mind clicked. Maybe I've been living in quiet chaos for longer than I realized. We ended the date with a hug, warm, not suggestive, and a simple, "I'd like to see you again." Me too. When I came home, Leah was in the living room pretending to scroll her phone. I could tell from the way she looked up too quickly that she'd been waiting. "How was your thing?" she asked. "My thing was good." She blinked. "Okay, good." But something shifted in her expression, like she was seeing me differently. Not as the stable background character she took for granted. Not as the emotional sponge she dismissed. But as someone who could walk away and be wanted elsewhere. She looked thrown, almost threatened. But she said nothing. The next morning, Leah knocked on my door. She never knocked. "Hey," she said, eyes down. "Do you have a minute?" I nodded. She stepped in and sat on the edge of the bed, picking at a loose thread on her sweater. "I've been thinking," she started, "about what I said. The whole roommate thing." I stayed quiet. "It was stupid," she said, "and mean. And I was frustrated. I shouldn't have said it." She glanced up, searching my face for softness. I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. Not cold, just neutral. "Okay," I said. She frowned. "Okay, that's it. What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Something. Anything." I took a slow breath. "I'm not angry, Leah, but I'm not going back to how things were just because you regret the wording." She stiffened. "I didn't say I regret everything, I know." I cut in gently. "That's the point." Her jaw tensed, and for the first time since our shift, her voice wavered. "Are you seeing someone?" she asked softly. I paused, not to create tension, but to be honest. "I went on a date." She inhaled sharply, almost flinching. "Already. You said we weren't together." I reminded her. I just respected it. She stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous." "Is it? You move on that fast." "No," I said quietly. I just finally stopped clinging. That broke something in her posture. A tiny exhale. A moment of realization. She left the room without another word. This is the part that still replays in my mind sometimes. I was leaving the apartment, dressed in a casual button-down and dark jeans. Nothing dramatic. But Leah was in the hallway, arms folded, pretending to check something on her phone. "Going out again?" she asked. "Yes." "With her?" I didn't answer, but I didn't need to. Her eyes hardened. "I just think it's disrespectful to flaunt dates in front of someone you live with." I stared at her for a long second. "You told me you didn't see me as a boyfriend." "Your words, not mine." "I didn't think you'd take it literally," she snapped. "Then you shouldn't have said it literally." Silence. 2 full seconds of it. Then she said something she definitely hadn't planned. "I didn't think you'd be able to move on." There it was. The truth under all the smoke. She didn't want me, but she didn't want anyone else to want me either. I stepped past her toward the door. Her voice lifted behind me. You're seriously going on another date? I turned back just enough to meet her eyes. I'm doing what roommates do, I said, living my life. And when I walked out, I saw the thing she tried to hide. Her face falling. Not from jealousy, not from heartbreak, from realization. She had pushed me away, and I had actually gone. The breaking point didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It came quietly, like most endings do. About a week after the parking lot moment, I woke up to Leah sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a mug of untouched coffee. Her hair was messy, eyes red in that way people get after several nights of bad sleep. She looked smaller somehow, like the edges of her confidence had frayed. When I walked in, she straightened, trying to look composed. Can we talk? She asked. I sat across from her. Neutral, calm, detached in a way I never thought I'd be capable of with her. I hate how things are, she said, fingers tightening around the mug. This distance, this coldness. You set the terms, I reminded her gently. She flinched. I know, but I didn't think you'd actually follow them. That's the problem, Leah. You thought I'd stay no matter what. Her eyes filled, not tears yet, but the sheen before. I miss us, she whispered. I miss who we were, I corrected. Not who we became. She swallowed, voice cracking. Are you going to leave? A long silence settled between us. She stared at me like the answer might break her. I think I have to, I said. It wasn't said out of anger. It wasn't punishment. It was acceptance. Her lips parted, then trembled shut. She nodded once, small, resigned, like she already knew. When? She asked. This month. Because of her? Meaning Marissa? No, I said truthfully. Because I finally understood you don't want the version of me that actually exists. You want the imaginary version you thought I'd grow into. And I can't spend my life trying to audition for a role I never agreed to. Her shoulders crumpled a little. I was stupid, she whispered. We both were, I corrected. Just in different ways. The final days. The remaining days in the apartment felt like living in a memory already fading. We divided the furniture cleanly. No screaming matches, no dramatic scenes. Just logistics. But there were small moments. Quiet, intimate, painful. She lingered in doorways when I walked past. She asked if I wanted the blue mug, since it was always your favorite. She cooked dinner one night and hesitated before saying, There's extra, if you want. I didn't. Not out of spite. Just because I knew accepting it would blur the lines again. The last conversation. The night before I moved out, she knocked on my half-packed room's door. I know this is my fault, she said quietly. It's not about fault, I replied. It's about honesty. You were honest. You told me how you saw me. But I didn't mean it, she said quickly. Not like that. That doesn't change how you felt in the moment. And it doesn't change what it revealed. What did it reveal? She asked, voice almost pleading. That you stopped seeing me. You saw what you wished I'd be, or what you feared I wasn't, but not me. And that's something we can't fix by pretending it's 2019 again. A tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily, like it betrayed her pride. For what it's worth, she whispered, you weren't boring. I was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to say that without hurting you. I sighed softly. Hurting me wasn't the problem. Not being willing to repair it, that was. She nodded, eyes closing briefly as if trying to freeze the moment. Goodbye, she said. Goodbye, Leah. No dramatic hug. No last kiss. No desperate confession. Just two people acknowledging an ending. After moving out, my new place is smaller but quieter, peaceful in a way I didn't realize I needed. Marissa and I are still seeing each other, slowly, carefully. She doesn't ask for updates about Leah. She doesn't try to fill the space Leah left. She's just present, and that's enough. I've learned that silence can feel like suffocation or like healing, depending on who shares it with you. I still think about Leah sometimes. Not with bitterness, not with longing, with a kind of gentle understanding. She wasn't the villain. She was someone who didn't know how to articulate her dissatisfaction without destroying everything around her. And I was someone who didn't know how to leave before he was pushed. We were mismatched tools trying to fix a leaky foundation. Final reflection. People think breakups end with one big explosion. But the truth is quieter. Sometimes they end the moment a partner says one sentence too honestly. Sometimes they end when the other person finally listens. Sometimes they end when you stop trying to hold together something that doesn't hold you back. I'm not healed. I'm not better. I'm just growing. Slowly. Imperfectly. What I lost wasn't a girlfriend. It was the version of myself who kept buying stability at the price of self-respect. And what I gained was this. If someone tells you what you are to them, believe them. Not because you're weak, but because it's the first step to becoming someone stronger.